Good morning, everyone. 3 weeks ago, in the early hours of Saturday, the 20th of March, Tania passed away. I spoke to her parents, Rita and Aubrey Douglas, that morning, and they said they were planning to hold a memorial service to celebrate Tania's life, and they invited me to deliver a eulogy. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to honor your daughter. Tania's mother, Helena Harriet Vaughan, known to her family and friends as Rita, comes from a large family of 4 sisters and 3 brothers. Her older brother Stanley and younger sister Jennifer, together with their families, are here with us today. Aubrey, who had an older brother Ronald, was born in Aberdeen, and as he told me, and I quote, "That's in the Karoo kit, not in Scotland." However, as I also learned, his great-grandfather Douglas did indeed emigrate to South Africa from Scotland in the late 19th century. Rita and Aubrey, who both trained as teachers, were married in 1964, and 5 years later, on the 11th of August, 1969, Tania Samantha Douglas was born. She was an only child, but, as I learned, she was never short of playmates, especially the male cousins from the Vaughan family. Tania grew up in Puckelsdorp, a small, close-knit community in the Southern Cape on the outskirts of George, where her parents both taught. This was during the apartheid era, when career opportunities for coloured families were limited, but Aubrey and Rita impressed on their daughter the importance of education. By 1980, Tania's parents had both worked for the Cape Education Department for more than 20 years, and so they were eligible for a 6-month sabbatical on full pay. Tania had just started Standard 3, and her parents obtained permission to take her out of school as the family embarked on a round-the-world trip. They started in Greece, and from there travelled to Italy, and with a 1-month Eurorail pass, they explored Europe. A flight from Paris took them to London with a visit to Scotland, and then it was off to New York. Here the family explored the United Nations building, took a ferry to Staten Island, and marvelled at the Statue of Liberty. Tania celebrated her 11th birthday in Hawaii before their holiday finished in Australia. As her cousin Trevor commented, "We know when and where she was bitten by the travel bug." When it was time for Tania to go to high school, her parents, wanting the best for their daughter, gave serious consideration to the possibility of sending her to boarding school here in Cape Town. However, Royce Husky, who is delivering the sermon today, he was the principal of Hoërskool Puckelsdorp at the time, and he persuaded the Douglases to keep Tania at home. As I learned recently, Tania completed all 12 years of her schooling in Afrikaans, although the family spoke English at home. She became head girl at high school, and her deputy and best friend was Zarande Miller, who is with us today and will also be speaking shortly. As a teenager, Tania loved to play with her male cousins, and she was willing to have a go at anything they were engaged in. She joined in their backyard cricket matches, whistling as she came in to bowl, and I understand she was the only one who managed to bowl a maiden over, although, as Trevor said somewhat disparagingly, it was because the ball was nowhere near the batsman. On a holiday trip to Windhoek, where there was an Olympic-sized swimming pool, her parents were alarmed when they saw her go up onto the highest diving board, determined not to be outdone by the cousins. In 1987, Tania was in matric, and her parents brought her to Cape Town, where she had an opportunity to visit UCT. She made up her mind then and there that was where she wanted to study. As Aubrey told me yesterday, quote, Tania brought the forms to me and I simply signed on the dotted line. At the end of the year, the Douglas family came to Cape Town to await the results of the matriculation examinations. Cousin Trevor, just 3 months younger than Tania, had also written his matric that year at St. Columba's High School in Athlone. Trevor was out swimming with his grandfather at Sunrise Beach and so missed the excitement when the results were announced. When he returned home, he saw his cousin Tania doing a hop and a skip as she excitedly informed him that he had come third in the examinations administered by the House of Representatives. Trevor asked, "So, how did Tania do?" He was told that she had pipped him and had actually come second in the country. And the two of them subsequently featured in a front page story with accompanying photograph on the front page of the Cape Times. The government had recently rescinded the requirement that coloured students needed the permission of the Minister of Education to study at a historically white university. And so in 1988, the two cousins enrolled at UCT, Tania for a degree in electrical and electronic engineering, and Trevor for a degree in physics and mathematics. The two of them were in the same first-year class in physics, and Tania made sure she sat next to Trevor, just in case there was a strange English word that she'd not previously encountered. Well, sure enough, such a word came up. It was torque. That is spelled T-O-R-Q-U-E. She whispered in his ear in Afrikaans, "Wat beteken torque?" He replied in English, "It's a twisting force that tends to cause rotation." And then, somewhat mischievously, he followed up, "En in Afrikaans is die woord wringkrag." One of the people that encouraged Tania to study engineering was Lynn Hanmer, who was in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at UCT and Groote Schuur Hospital with me in the early 1980s. Lynn was one of few women who had majored in electrical and electronic engineering in the 1970s, and she subsequently earned a master's degree in bioengineering at Strathclyde in Glasgow, Scotland. While Tania was completing her degree at UCT, her father, Aubrey, by now retired, was completing his own PhD at the University of Port Elizabeth with a thesis that explored a program of instruction to prevent underachievement at primary school level. The father was clearly an inspiration to his talented daughter. Tania was a true citizen of the world, transcending geography and embracing the environment in which she found herself. After graduating from UCT with a BSc Honours degree in electronic engineering, a scholarship took her to the United States, where she earned a master's degree in biomedical engineering at Vanderbilt University, followed by a PhD in bioengineering at the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. For her postdoctoral fellowship, Tania spent a year in Tokyo working on image processing for the Japan Broadcasting Corporation. She even learned some rudimentary Japanese while there, impressing her cousins with her ability to read a letter that was sent after her return home. I first met Tania in early 2000 when she applied for a lecturer's post in biomedical engineering at UCT, and we interviewed her via video link while she was still in Japan. She returned to her alma mater later that year and soon became a key member of our recently established medical imaging research unit. For the past 2 decades, it's given me enormous pleasure to watch Tania grow from a young academic with great potential into an accomplished scholar with a well-deserved international reputation. Tania's research focused on major public health problems in South Africa, for which she developed novel instruments and computer-assisted techniques. The first was an optical method for eye feature extraction to diagnose the facial phenotype associated with fetal alcohol syndrome, for which our country has the world's highest incidence. This research subsequently led to her research group being recognized as among the world's leaders in facial morphology. Tania also made seminal contributions in TB diagnosis, including the development of a smart microscope for automated detection in sputum smears and computer-aided detection of pulmonary pathology in pediatric chest x-rays. Tania's more recent research emphasized the social context of the technological innovation and the importance of end-user engagement. With a new postgraduate program in health innovation, she created an ecosystem in which biomedical engineering and social context were employed to identify novel solutions for improved health. Tania launched and was founding editor of an electronic journal, Global Health Innovation, and recently published the open access book entitled Biomedical Engineering for Africa. During her career, Tania received numerous prestigious awards, including research fellowships from the International Institute for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, Italy, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation in Germany, and the Erasmus Mundus program of the European Union. In August 2019, she was recognized at the South African Women in Science Awards in Port Elizabeth as Distinguished Woman Researcher in Research and Innovation. During the past decade, Tania was elected a Fellow by the South African Academy of Engineering, the International Academy for Medical and Biological Engineering, and the University of Cape Town. One of the attributes that I most admired in Tania was her competitive spirit. I fondly recall the squash games played by our research group on Friday afternoons before retiring to the Mac Club for well-earned refreshments. In the USA, obtaining a research grant from the National Institutes of Health is considered a sine qua non for medical researchers. Tania was the first person in our research group to secure her own NIH grant to develop a smart microscope for the detection of tuberculosis. When she earned the executive MBA from our Graduate School of Business in 2012, Tania was awarded the gold medal as the most outstanding student. I learned about the award not from her, but when reading her CV while we were working on a grant together. Tania loved to travel, and she had friends all over the world. I was amazed and a little envious that she took the time to learn and speak the languages of the countries she planned to visit, including Italian, French, and German. There were 2 occasions when I was overseas and Tania visited me. The first was in 2003 when I was on sabbatical in Ireland, and she came to spend a few days with my wife Joan and me. She embraced the Irish culture, drinking a pint of Guinness at a pub in Dublin, eating fish and chips on the Howth Peninsula, and visiting the ancient burial grounds at New Grange. The second occasion was in 2008, when Tania was on sabbatical in Cologne, Germany, and she flew to England to join me at Cambridge University for the UK launch of my biography of Alan Cormack, the UCT alumnus who won the Nobel Prize for the CT scanner. It was a great privilege for me to serve as a mentor to Tania, and she in turn was a loyal supporter of my career. She was a co-investigator on a grant funded by the NIH to develop a novel method for detecting breast cancer. Tania supported my decision to take early retirement, and we co-founded a company called Cape Ray, to commercialize the technology. When I presented my valedictory lecture at UCT in December 2009, she delivered the vote of thanks. Tania gave me a book by Andrew Grove, the CEO of Intel, entitled "Only the Paranoid Survive," in which she wrote, "Dear Kit, I thought this might provide some inspiration for the new venture," and I liked the title. For the past 11 years, she served on Cape Ray's board of directors, providing wise and thoughtful counsel. I last saw Tania in person when I visited her at her flat in late January this year, and she invited me in for a cup of coffee. We had a long chat, catching up, and she told me that she'd recently been invited to serve on the council at Wits University. I also learned that she'd just been appointed as the editor-in-chief of the international journal Medical Engineering and Physics. I'd like to conclude with the words of Professor Sharon Prince, Tania's friend and the head of the Department of Human Biology at UCT. Sharon wrote to the department on the morning of Tania's passing, and I quote, "We will remember Tania for being an amazing woman, brave, humble, and brilliant. She lived her life and carried her illness with extraordinary grace and dignity. We will remember her for her astute intellect and her quiet humanity to build others in the process. She was talented and gracious, and we will remember her positive attitude and ever-present beautiful smile," end quote. May her departed soul rest in peace.